purposely in this style of writing. It's just not unique to the Bible. Ancient writers used this form. Was a method of helping them to memorize various things. And they would tell these stories, and they would pass these oral stories down. And the writer decided to put it in this form to help the memorization and to give some last details about King David. So the timeline is all over the place here. It's not written in the order form of actual historical time, but these events actually happen, and the writer is throwing this in at the end of his writing. So we had 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, and we're doing 1 now, the last one. That's what we are now, the second of the first part, the second of the first part. And who can remember what the first part was all about? Who remembers? We talked about the 3 parts. The first part was about what? Divine judgment, right? Divine judgment. The second part was about what? His soldiers, right? Y'all remember all those stories we read about it? We said those stories are fascinating. They should be on television, right? That's like some superhero stuff that we would love to watch. And the third part was about what? His music or his poetry, right? And we know David was a great musician. But now we're back on 1 again, divine judgment. And we want you to all understand that God has 2 sides. Parents have 2 sides. Who can explain what I'm talking about? Parents have 2 sides like God has 2 sides. No, not sides of the family. I'm talking about, a parent can have that good side, and they can have that other side, right? And many parents warn their children, like, don't have my other side come out, right? Okay? But that other side is necessary, okay? Spoiling children is not a good thing at all. As a school teacher, I would tell people all the time, I'd rather deal with a bad child than a spoiled child. Okay, give me a child that just misbehaving because they don't know any better. But a spoiled child, or a child who feel they're entitled to certain things, they're hard to deal with. Okay, now that may be cute when they're young, when you're getting them everything they want, but how many of you know that same child will turn on you later? Do I have a witness? Now, we're the same way with God, right? God bless us, give us all these great things and these great lives that we have, and that same person whom God have blessed have turned their back on God. Haven't we seen that? All right, and we're the ones guilty sometimes, right? We're the very ones that have done that very thing, and we have to look back over our life and say, why did I do that to God? As good as God had been to me, I was wrong for that. Anybody ever said that about themselves? I was wrong? We like to say when other people are wrong, but how many of you can say, I was wrong? I was wrong for that, right? So God has a judgment side. Sometimes God has to get us back in line. And this is what we're looking at part 1, this second part in this chapter of our book. We study another dark incident in David's life. And it's about a census David took of the men of Israel. And it tells us about the second of the 2 judgments, a pestilence upon Israel, which are recorded in the last few chapters. While our text starts out darkly now, it does end brighter. So before we close, we'll have something to smile about. Also, the last part of our text informs us how the land was obtained, where Solomon is going to build the temple in our next, when we get to the king stories. The time when this incident occurred, like the time of the famine, is uncertain again. So I don't want you to think this happened at the end of David's reign. We just don't know that. But scholars do believe it occurred during the late part of David's reign as king. But the most we can say for certain is that the incident occurred at a time when Israel was at peace during David's time as king. Now we know most of the time they were doing what? Fighting who? Who was the enemy? Come on now, class. Come on. Who was the enemy of David? And the Philistines, right? Most of the time. But scholars believe that this incident that happened here happened during a time of peace. Okay? We make this conclusion from the fact that Joab, David's military chief, was able to be gone from Jerusalem for over 9 months. Joab wasn't even in town. Okay? He could relax. He was on a 9-month vacation. So that tells us that they had to be at peace at this time. All right? Now, let's look at it. First, the project. Now, let's just read it. And what's the very first word you see? Again. Now, all of us who've been studying so far ought not be surprised at that word, again. Okay? Again, the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, go and take a census of Israel. Now, we're going to talk about that because it looks like what I'm reading, God caused David to do this. It said, and he, talking about God, incited David against them. So let's see what's going on. All right. The king said to Joab, the captain of the host, go now through all of the tribes of Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, and number ye the people, that I may know the number of the people. All right, so to understand this, let's look at first the people in the command. All right, so the people. This command did not concern numbering, all the people, even though it seems like that. What he was asking Joab to do was go out and count the warriors, those who can go to war, the able bodies that can fight. Now, why would he do that? Why do we do it? Why do we in the United States focus a lot on our military? Everybody but Brother Powell. Why do we focus on our military? Right, they our what? Protection, right? We feel they protect us. And that's truly false. But we think that we got the most powerful military in the world, right? And we think we're safe because of that fact. Matter of fact, we do parades like other countries. They do parades where they show off all their weaponry, drive the tanks down the street, have all the soldiers marching, and we're proud of that, right? As if we're protecting ourselves, all right? So this is what he's asking. And you see I have it in yellow. The number, enroll the what kind of men? The fighting men. This is what he wants to know. And David, of all people, should know better. Who can give me a little history about some of the battles that they had, and it was God who gave the victory? Who can give me some examples? Reverend Cole? God gave him the victory, right? We studied about one battle he had with Absalom, right? And it said that more of the enemy were killed by the forest than by the sword. Okay? So God was the one giving them the strategy and giving them the victory. God was the real warrior in the battle. And how many of you can look at your life and know it wasn't you who did that? It was God. How many of you know God worked that thing out for you because you didn't even have a clue how to work it out. And God worked it out, and you have to give him the credit. You know, you have to go on and say, that wasn't nothing but the Lord who did that for us. All right, but David here is asking for them to count. Now, this word number supports a military census, okay? This word number in its original language, it's translated to number, but it means a military. It's a war word that he was asking for Joab to do. All right? Second, the description of the people. Being numbered supports a military census. When the totals are reported from the census, they are described as valiant men that drew the sword. Okay, and in this text it says able-bodied men. Y'all see that in verse 9? Y'all see that? I got it in yellow. Able-bodied men who could handle a sword. So David wasn't just asking for a count of men. He was looking for his fighters. You know, how many fighters do we have? And how many of you really believe that just because you had a majority, that's right? How many people in the world follow the crowd? And they think because the crowd is there, it must be the right thing. How many of you believe the party is better when the crowd is there, right? You know, and that's not necessarily true, okay? The elders say God in one is the majority. You ever heard that? Sometimes you got to stand by yourself. And there's a scripture that talks about the crowd leads to destruction, but the few lead to righteousness. Have you ever heard that? But we want to belong to the biggest churches, right? We love crowds, right? And we love to say, man, that thing was packed, right? Man, everybody was there. We love saying stuff like that as if that make a thing right, okay? But many follow the path to destruction. Only a few go in the right way. So David was deceived here. He was thinking that if I had X amount of number of able-bodied men who can handle the sword, nobody can defeat us, okay? And we think the same thing. What is an arms race? Who went to school? Everybody went to school, I'm sure. And what is an arms race? Yes, Brother Smith. Yeah. They're in competition. I have more atomic weapons. You got 9, but I got 12, right? What good is it if you're dead from the one they shoot you with, right? So, you know, but we think that we can scare folk with our number of weapons. We have X amount of ships in the waters out there that can sink all of your ships, right? It's like children. We playing these games and we're believing in our own might. And we love doing that. So here's David doing that. Third, the director of the census supports a military census. David employed Joab. Joab was the head of the military, all right? And here's David the king asking him to do something that's clearly against God's will. Why would God be upset over that? Who can answer that? Why would God be upset? What do you think? Why would God be upset about them counting? That seems like nothing, right? Right. How many people do that with their money? How many people say, if I had $1 million in the bank, everything will be all right? You know, some of y'all still, because you want the $1 million, some of you still support that premise. Well, Reb, I'll take that chance with it. But how many of you know, how many of you watch rich people? Do they have peace because they have all that money? they do not. Do their marriages stay together because they have all the money? Do their children do right because they have all that money? Do they escape the hospital because they have all that money? Does debt not knock on their door because they have all that money? No. The money means nothing. It means nothing. It's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. Okay? And it's not going to protect you from anything. Okay? And if you took Economics 101 in college, the very first lesson they teach you is the more you make, finish it for me. All right? How many of y'all know that's true? Because when we were making $7 an hour, we were broke. Do I have a witness in here? And we say, if I only made more an hour, but how many of you making more an hour and you still say, because the more you make, the more you spend. So there's no security in those things. The only security we have is in the Lord. So it's not about how many jobs you can get. We can't sacrifice our relationship with the Lord because we're running behind the things of this world. Okay, there's no security in those things. Jesus gave that very example in a parable he told. Y'all remember the parable about the man with the barns? Who remember that parable? Who can tell me that parable real quickly? What was this man's problem? Brother Paul, stand up and tell us what that parable was. Yeah, stand up. You ain't did nothing today. You off. Yeah. All right, so just when you think you got it made. Now, we know that some of us have built our little barns in our little minds, right? We built our little barns. How many of you got your house just the way you wanted it? Like, ooh, finally. And then everything in that thing started breaking, right? Right, one behind the other. How many of y'all know what I'm talking about? Soon as you got it just where you wanted it, soon as you get a few dollars in the bank, right? That's how it is. So God don't want us putting our trust and our hope in those things, in the things of this world, all right? He wants us to look to him. So David is making a critical mistake here. All right, now let's look at this, the prompting of the command. Now, I want everybody to pay attention to this, and I'm going to close with this on tonight. Again is the word. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel. Now, I want you to know that Israel is the problem here. They had a habit of doing this very thing that God told them not to do. What was that thing they would always do? Idolatry. Here it is again. And God is so upset with them that his anger is burning against them. And I want you to learn something tonight. When you're stubbornly committing a sin against the Lord our God, he will help you with it. Now, I want y'all to understand me. Okay, you want to go out and stay till 1 o'clock in the morning? Let's stay till 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, I want you to understand the God you serve. He's going to make it worse on you. Instead of getting a 1 o'clock in the morning whipping, now you're going to get a 4 o'clock in the morning whipping, because I'm going to help you carry out what you think that is you ought to do against me. So this is what it means where it says, he incited David. He incited David against them. God caused David, in other words, God said, go ahead, David, for a little while, I'm going to let you be David. I know you're like a book, and I know if I step back from you, you're going to do something dumb. How many of y'all know that about yourself? How many of you beg God, don't step back 1 inch, because when you do, I'm going to do something dumb. How many of y'all know I'm telling the truth here? About you now. I'm not talking about nobody else. I'm talking about me, all right? I know, God, don't move, Lord. Don't move, because if you move, I'm going to do the wrong thing. And this is what God knew about David, all right? So I want you to understand this, and we're going to help you understand a little better. Let me see if I can find this other, well, let me just show you this in the New Testament first, because Paul addressed this too. Stubbornness leads to God's wrath. Now, this stubborn spirit, you got to be careful. You got to be careful not to hold a thing. You got to let a thing go. Especially when God is showing you his grace. When he give you time to change your mind, you need to go ahead and change your mind before it gets horrible for you. But look at this scripture, Romans 2, 5, and 6. It says, but because of your what? And your what? I told you to repent. I told you to turn around from that thing. I told you to change your mind. You're doing this to you. You are storing up wrath against who? For the day of God's wrath. In other words, when I come down to whip. Now, how many of you got this whipping before when your parents say, I done told you, I want, and now you're getting extra licks, right? You're getting the extra licks because you kept the thing what? Going. Like I told you, right? Cut it out. But you kept on doing it, okay? Parents used to say, don't say another word, right? Now, that was enough. That was hard enough. That was stress enough on you to just shut up. That killed you. All your inside burning to say something else, and you can't, right? But then you go on ahead and say another word. So now, besides the burning inside your chest, come on now, I'm trying to help y'all. Because some of y'all burning in the chest and you just want to say something, but I'm telling you, don't say it. Don't take it another step, because now what you're doing to yourself, when his righteous judgment will be revealed, God will repay each person according to what they have done. So this hardness of the heart, this unrepentant spirit by Israel, this constant doing this same thing that I told you not to do, you keep doing the same. How many of you as parents get tired of saying the same thing? Now, it's easier to control that at home than my experience in the schools, because the kids don't care what you say, and they do the exact thing you told them not to do daily. Like if you say, come into class, sit down, don't go to the pencil sharpener. What happens, teachers, the next day? And you like this here, like, really? Right? And then you think, because you say, really? I told y'all yesterday, don't go to, what happens the next day, teachers? That's what we do, God. The very same thing he tells us over and over and over and over. We keep doing it. Now you're building up his wrath. And when his wrath comes down on you, don't call a pastor that day and say, pray for me. It's too late. It's too late. And, I tell this story about Reverend Carl, my cousin, all the time, because when we went to Mississippi, my grandmother used to whip with an extinction cord. Anybody got those kind of whipping? Yeah, I got one thanks to Reverend Carl, okay? Because she had told him all day, stop it, you better cut it out, you better stop, you better cut it out. And then that point, she got to that point, and she was mad, and he don't know how to stand in one place and get his whipping. He wants to run all behind us, and she mad. She whipping everybody. So the whole house got a whipping that day. And so don't come running behind me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't call me, because I ain't trying to get no extension cord from God for you. Go on, get that by yourself. Okay, so that's what happens when you're stubborn, when you're just continuing, just want to do your thing. Now, this particular story is not only written in the book of 2 Samuel, but the same account is written in 1 Chronicles. Okay, so when we get there, you're going to see the same story written again. And here is a part of it right here. Chronicles 21, 1 and 2. Same story written again, the Chronicles of the King. If y'all know what the word Chronicles, the records of the king. So the record keeper was also keeping this record. And this is probably where the writer of 2 Samuel got the story from in the first place, from the Chronicles. All right, but look what it says here. Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census of Israel. Listen, it's bad when God let you take advice from the devil. How many of y'all done took some advice from the devil? Just be honest in here. How many of y'all done took that advice? There's only two places to get advice. Either from God or you're going to get it from the devil. I guess the devil say, no, some of that advice comes from yourself. And he just say, you're right. I agree. Okay, but the Bible clearly says here concerning the same event, Satan rose up. So God is allowing this. So David said to Joab, after Satan got in his heart, right? And the commanders of the troops, go and count the Israelites from Beersheba to Dan. Then report back to me so that I may know how many there are. And that's going to make him feel proud of himself, right? There we go. So the king said, I'm going back to 2 Samuel. So the king said to Joab, y'all can see it's the same story, and the army commanders with him, go throughout the tribes of Israel. Y'all see it's written in two parts of the Bible, from Dan to Beersheba, and number and roll the fighting men so that I may know. So David's pride is here. Pride. Many pastors suffer with pride. Many pastors brag about. Now, I was at the Congress one year, Reverend Carr, sitting in the preacher's class, and they had some preachers from New Orleans in that class too. And the teacher of the class was from California. And he was teaching us a lesson about how to handle your fold. And he said, well, by the way, let me see the sizes of the churches so I can know what I'm dealing with. You know, and he said, my church is about 75 members. You know, and he was the teacher of the class. Very intelligent young man. He said, my congregation is about 75. And he got to me, and I said, we're about 150 to 200. And he said, okay. And they had some other preachers there that I know. I've been to the church. And I know. Oh, we got 300, Doc. Trying to, what? What they were trying to do? Impress somebody. Impress somebody. Like that number made them the big pastor. And they was dressed better than the teacher and everybody else. Walking around looking like kings, you know, and like, what are you doing? Don't you know God really know how many members you have? And some of us who here with you? And they just lie, trying to impress people. So David wanted this number so he can feel good about his kingdom. Pride. And many of us do that with our salaries. We tell all our business because we want people to think we make a whole lot of money. But let me tell you something. They had a chart on the board at the meeting last night talking about African American homes, and how much money we average. Then they had the Hispanic and how much they average. If you didn't know that, the Spanish are making more than African American. And the number they put on the board, white folk just had to put their head down because they just can't believe. They're ashamed of the fact of the amount of money that we bring home. So what we do is go around bragging. We want to brag about how much money we make, as if that make you better than or greater than somebody else, when the other race of people looking at all of us and saying, po things. Just when you thought you caught up, do I have two witnesses in here? Just when you moved in the neighborhood, they the ones sold you the house, you dummy, right? They sold you the house because they moving what? And they moving what? So you just make a fool out yourself. And so he says, so that I may know. Okay? So that I may know. Bragging and proud and showing off. The churches were making their donations last night. I'm not going to call this preacher's name, but all of us was hanging around that minimum number. You know, just that's all we can do. So this one preacher, and most of us had somebody represent the church. The pastor wasn't up there. They let other members go up and say, this is our donation. And it was a rally type thing. But this pastor got up there. And he had all his members, like 3 rows of his members there. And he got up there and he said, I'm the pastor of this church and we make a donation of, and he said his big number. And boy, his church got up, cheering, and he walked down the aisle. If y'all just saw the walk, if y'all just saw he walked, it's like, we should have videoed that, because that's a shame. Showing off to be seen of men, right? To be looked up to. God said you got your reward. You got what that's what you wanted. That's all you're going to get. Okay? So don't be a show-off person. Don't do things to bring attention to yourself. Don't brag about what God gave you. David didn't realize you're only on that throne because I put you there. I could have put anybody there. How many of you know God is going to have somebody else in your house that won't even know who you are? How many of y'all know that? While you bragging about it, it's only yours for a little while. There's going to be a whole nother family living there that won't know a thing about you. Okay? Or care about the things you think are important. Now, my mother can't stand even look across the street now. She sold our house, and you know, you want to pass by and still see it looking the same. It don't look the same. And they don't care nothing about what they cared about. It's just material things. And these things ought to be used not to worship and not to bring value to your name. If you have a blessing, say thank you, Lord. How many of y'all can say thank you, Lord, right now? Thank you. And how many of you know you should take care of what God give you? And you're only using it for what? A little while, that's all. So David didn't understand, and he sinned against God, and God's going to use this because he's already mad at Israel. Now I got something I could whip y'all on. I'm going to allow y'all to be yourself. I'm going to allow y'all to think you got what you got because of you. And then I'm going to show you who's God. I don't want God to have to show us that he's God. Don't get to the point to brag about Pleasant Valley, and because God can show you that I give and I take away. Okay, so don't brag about anything. It all belongs to the Lord. How many of you know God already know every person in Pleasant Valley who's going to come through and who's going to leave? He already know. So it don't make sense for you. My father says, Reginald, the church will go up, it will go up, and it'll go back what? It's going to do that. People will be in and out. Don't get upset about it. You teach whoever's sitting in the pew. Your job is not to worry about those things. You teach God's word. The church belongs to God. It doesn't belong to any of us. All right, but look at Joab here. The protest against this. Joab, now, if y'all been studying with me, y'all ought to know Joab is a murderer, right? Y'all know Joab. Y'all know his history. But look at Joab trying to do the right thing. But Joab replied to the king, may the Lord your God multiply the troops 100 times over, and may the eyes of my Lord the king see it. But why, David? Why does my Lord the king want to do such a thing? This Joab talking now. Can God speak through anybody? Yeah. He wanted to know the number in order to feed his ego, we said, to his great army, a problem all rulers have, right? In Germany, Hitler would stand on a podium, right? Stand like that, right? And all his powerful army would pass by, not knowing that God was going to take him down, okay? But he thought his power was in those people passing in the tanks and the weapons and all of that, not understanding that that means nothing to God. God can bring you down when he's ready to bring you down, okay? And he will. Pride is always a great promoter of our sin. The comment we can make about all proud people is in Psalms 119:21. You rebuke, look what the writer says, you rebuke who? The arrogant, who are accursed, those who stray from your commands. So be careful in how you conduct yourself in this world. Don't ever pat yourself on the back or think more of yourself than you ought. Whatever God allow you to do for him, you ought to say thank you. Don't you think it's you? And don't you think God couldn't use nobody else? Don't be a fool. God can cause any man to speak, any man to sing. God can give talent to a mule to speak. Can he? Didn't the word tell you that? God can cause your dog to speak to you. He can do whatever he wants. He's sovereign. He's powerful. It's not you, it's God. You're not special. God is special. You're just an instrument God is using. Why brag on yourself? And it don't make sense for you to be jealous of anybody else who God is using. God can use you just as well as he can use anybody else. And you can't tell God how to use you. You can't tell God what to do with his own stuff. Anybody hear what I'm saying? Who in here could who in here have a house that tell you, no, drive me to work? Anybody got a house, a stupid house? A house tell you, look, drive me to work, leave the car here. Live in the car and drive me. What you say? That don't make sense. I didn't make you for that purpose. I made you to live in, and I made you to drive. So God has a purpose for everybody, and everybody's purpose is important. How many of you in New Orleans learning that the garbage man is important? Come on now, how many of y'all learning that lesson, right? And one time you might have looked down on that job like, man, a garbage man. Now, where the garbage man? Where they at? Now you're looking for him, huh? Now you realize they do need to get paid, because they can make your life pretty miserable. You walking out with your engineering suit on and you looking good going to work, right? And you all that, and the garbage man pass, and they say, hey, ma'am, you, garbage man. Now you're looking for him. Everybody is just as important, and you need to respect everybody in everything that they do. Okay, they tell you that in management, be very kind to the janitors. How many of you know a janitor can mess you up? Yeah, be kind. They tell us that in the school system. Be kind to the janitors. You want your room looking right the next day. Don't mess with the janitors now. You have a pile of dirt under your desk the next morning. Oh, yeah. All right, so be kind. Look at this. But Joab replied to the king, may the Lord your God. So it's Joab. But why does the Lord, the king, want to do such a thing? Joab asked him, man, you messing up. What is going on with you? That's not like you to do this. You know, you always taught us, rely upon the Lord. When you was going through all that with Absalom, you knew the Lord was you said the Lord is my shepherd. What are you doing now? Okay, he's outside of his character, but God is allowing this. David did not look at Chronicles, same story. David did not take the number of the men 20 years old or less, because the Lord had promised to make Israel as numerous as the stars in the sky. So David confident here. Somebody said in the eastern part of the world, they teaching little kids how to fight. Y'all know that? And even in certain parts of Africa, they take these little boys and teach them how to hold machine guns and how to shoot them, right? But look at David here. We don't have to count the children now. Don't count none of the children now. Because he knows that God had promised him that they'll be as numerous as the stars in the sky. And he's proud of the fact that all of my soldiers are men. They real men. And he wants to brag and boast in his own heart. Look at the Gospel of John 6:63. It says, the Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. If you are going to live or die, how many of you know you're in the hands of God? You can be healthy today and dead tomorrow, not sick. Have y'all even heard stories like that? Like they was doing good. They went to bed. They didn't get up. I've heard many stories that they went to lay down after they got out of work and they died. No one knows why. So the flesh you can't count on. Don't be too confident in this. Don't go around saying stuff like, I wish they would mess with me. What's your defense? You, the flesh? The flesh can easily die. The words I have spoken to you, they are full of the Spirit and life. We're going to stop right there because we're over time. All right? We're going to continue looking at this mistake David made, and we're going to see what we can learn from this mistake. Now, remember, this particular sin happened because God allowed it to, because he was already upset with them. He was already upset with them. So a lot of times in your sin life, and let me just talk to y'all a little bit, some of the things God allow you to do. Like, oh, you think you bad? Well, go on, be bad. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to step back and let you do a little more. Oh, you did that? I'm going to step back and let you do a little more. Oh, you real bad, huh? You all that. Let me step on back. And then God said, nah, that's enough. Now I'm going to beat you for all 4 of them times I had to step back. You don't want that kind of whipping. You might not be walking after that kind of beating. So be careful. Don't think you got away with it. You know, some people sin and God don't do nothing. They say, man, he ain't do nothing. He just stepped back and say, okay. What? That's all you got? Oh, you got a little more than that, huh? Older folks say, nip that thing in the... Y'all heard it? I'm the only one who heard these things? A child curse. What should you do, parents? Should you say, well, that was just one word, slip of the tongue? He slipped. He was mad. He called me out my name, but he didn't mean it. How many parents like that? See, you can't handle it like God can. God tell you chastise them. Stop that right then. Right there on the spot. But we want to be like God. Oh, you say one curse word? I'm going to step on back. Go ahead. Then they call you 2 curse words. And you tell me, girl, I ain't doing nothing. Because I remember I was angry like that too back when I was young. Then he called you 4 curse words. Then he cussing everybody. The teacher, your mama, grandma called. He cussed mama out too. Now what you want to do? Now you want to kill him, right? Okay, so God tell us, stop it immediately. Stop it immediately. Don't let it happen. So in our life, we got to ask God, when I mess up, stop me what? Right then. Stop me. Open my ears, Lord, that I may hear you. Chastise me immediately, Lord, so that I won't continue and become worse. Because you can make this thing really hard on you. And this is what Israel have done. And we're going to watch them over the years as we keep studying. They're going to cut up all the way until God take everything from them. And these things are written for our example. This is life. And we just keep on keeping on until we lose everything we have. As African Americans, God have brought us from a mighty long way. But how many of you can be honest and say, we're starting to go the wrong way now? How many of y'all can be honest? We're starting to agree with the world now. We done turned our back on God. We don't go to church like we used to no more. So we're heading in the wrong direction. And God loves you. Them I love. All right, we're going to stop right there. Let us stand, and we're going to continue on next week.
The Pleasant Valley Missionary Baptist Church welcomes you to Wisdom Wednesday, led by the Reverend Dr. Reginald Varnado Sr.